It's no big hot take to say that the Splatoon franchise's primary focus has always been its multiplayer. From the regular turf war battles, which are always exhilarating down to the very last second, all of the excellent ranked battle modes that spice up the typical gameplay mechanics like Splat Zones and Rainmaker. I'm not really so huge on Clam Blitz, honestly, but yo, tower control? That's my jam. And Salmon Run, oh my god, one of the best horde modes I've ever experienced in any game ever. It is so damn good. And then Table Turf is also there. Point being, multiplayer is a big deal for these games, but like, I don't know dude, I feel like not enough people really talk about all of these single player modes in these games. Between the first 3 Splatoon titles, 2 of which having DLC, we have 5 single player campaigns, each trying some new things, while ultimately staying pretty similar outside of throwing some crazy lore out there, because man, the Splatoon lore goes crazy. And the stoppage of the Wii U's online services got me thinking, does that make a game like Splatoon 1 useless now? Well, that's not really fair. Just because you can't play multiplayer on it, that disc is worthless? Nah. So why not? Here comes a brand new retrospective project. Welcome to part 1 of my Splatoon single player retrospective. Let's talk about Splatoon 1's single player campaign, Octo Valley. Now, the first thing I want to bring up with Splatoon is the story, and I know that the story doesn't really mean a whole lot for a whole lot of people for Splatoon, but damn it, Nintendo really tried to give a lot of lore and give you a bit of a reason to do the single player in the first place, so if they're going to put the time into making it kind of a big deal, I'm going to give it the same treatment. I'm a big fan of how the game starts off with the Squid Sisters doing their announcement broadcast like they do with their typical battle map announcements, but instead to let you know that, oh no, the great Zapfish is gone. It's stolen by the Octarians, the evil octopus creatures, along with a whole bunch of smaller Zapfish. So while you just play as a normal avatar in the overworld and you can like take a look at the Squid Sisters and have them wave at you, that's still adorable, you go down this sewer grate and you become Agent 3. And with the help of Captain Cuttlefish, who is a recurring character in this franchise, you set off on a mission to get the Zapfish back. There are some cutscenes and whatnot that do take place throughout, and you can tell that there's a lot of original imagery going on specifically in this single player mode. There's a lot of dialogue that comes in from Captain Cuttlefish throughout the stages, as well as in between some stages by Agent 1 and 2. Oh my goodness, I don't know who they could possibly be. But most of that crazy lore I was talking about was in one of the game's main collectibles, the Sunken Scrolls, and quite frankly, a lot of it is just what I read online, because the game does not really do a ton to let you know that what you're doing now is basically the result of a very, very, very long series of wars. Like, the lore of Splatoon is actually kind of crazy, like going into all this. This is representative of the multiplayer as well, but it's important to know because there's a battle going on between the Inklings and the Octolings, but this is all taking place after a human apocalyptic event thousands of years ago, okay? Like, that, the fact that that happened is crazy. So all the humans are gone, a whole lot of time has passed, and now we have these new creatures who are going to battle in this ancient format known as the Turf War. Ooh, it's basically what the multiplayer is. The multiplayer is essentially just like the kids making fun of war, which, to be fair, kids play with finger guns. I guess it's kind of like the same thing. It's funny because like that cat in the game, Judd, turns out that was actually a cat from when the humans were still around. That cat was cryogenically frozen for so many years, and then he was reawoken during the time of the Inklings. That's why if you look at the Sunken Scrolls, you see Judd showing off the results of earlier battles, even though that was so many years ago, and yet he's still here. That's why he was cryogenically frozen, and he was also given like a potion of immortality. That this cat's immortal. It's crazy. Look at this. There's a human skeleton here with like a Wii U and the stupid Wii U Pro Controller and Wii Remote combo, man. Like that's wild. You even get to see the origins of Callie and Marie, the Squid Sisters, because they won a singing contest when they were young. That's very cute. I do mention this all now, even though it may not seem like the most relevant thing in the world for Splatoon, but the thing is, there is a lot of cool lore in the Splatoon universe, but we'll talk about this more throughout this entire retrospective. The games themselves don't really do a whole lot to talk about it. They're mostly just Easter eggs for those who care. Whether or not that's the right call, I don't know, because when I read it, it's cool. When I play the game, it doesn't really matter. Now, when Splatoon was originally shown off, multiplayer was like the only focus of the game. So, okay, Nintendo's gonna try to tackle the multiplayer shooter format. Of course, it's gonna be colorful. That's the Nintendo way. But then a trailer shows up to show it's single player with these evil looking tentacle creatures, and the music was all trippy. There was this 8-bit style thing that doesn't show up in the final game, but you can tell, hey, there's actually gonna be a single player mode in this game. cool. When you dive in, yeah, it's pretty fun. The single player modes in Splatoon games typically get considered, you know, just kind of basic or whatever, but ultimately, this is a really good introduction to the Splatoon mechanics. Since this was a brand new thing at the time, of course, you had to have a more basic mode to just sort of introduce the player to all the new things that you can do, and then maybe you can plan out your strategies, the way that you'll take down some of these enemies. Maybe you'll want to implement that into the multiplayer, who knows? So the structure is like this. Octo Valley is split up into 5 different areas. You explore this area a little bit, you unveil these grates that lead to the levels, you go into the levels, and then the best way to immediately explain them is that they're very similar to, say, Super Mario Galaxy, in that it's just a whole series of linear challenges that once you complete this one section, there's like a portal thing where you can then jump to another series of platforms, do the same thing, and then just rinse and repeat the series of challenges until you get the small zapfish at the end. There's a really cool victory jingle. And look at the little zapfish go. He's adorable. All the important notes that Splatoon needed to hit for this very first single-player adventure, I feel like they hit them all on the head perfect. Like, Splatoon's style has always been one of its strong suits, and this game has that in spades. I love the sort of gritty look that the overworlds have. When you go in to the main levels, you never really get a chance to sit back and look at your surroundings, but there's a lot of cool domes that are taking place here. You see, the Octarians have built these underground domes, and that's where you're at right now, because if you look up in the sky, you can see that while it looks like you're outside, it's actually not. It's a bunch of like tiles and stuff just placed together to make it look like reality. Like, that's kind of cool. Like, when you really sit back and take a look at what this game is presenting you, there's a lot of cool artistic vision going on. And the same thing goes for the music. The music follows a very quirky style, and instruments and melodies that you don't typically hear from Nintendo. Like, this wasn't just the implementation of a new franchise Nintendo wanted to make a big deal. They wanted to commit to make it like a big deal, like give it its own full identity, make it not feel like it was like any other Nintendo franchise before, while also being able to take it seriously, and I think they got that done. There are 2 major points, one good and one bad, that come from the single player mode. For one, it plays really well. Splatoon just plays really fun, splatting ink down and then swimming through it. That's just a blast, and now being able to do that with some platforming and wall traversal, and not having to deal with the pressure of other players online wanting to snipe you at any given time, it's fun. It's a fun little mode. It plays great. Playing with the gamepad, the Wii U gamepad, is really fun. One thing I didn't even realize going back after playing so much of Splatoon 2 and 3 on the Switch is the gamepad is not prone to gyro drifting. So the gamepad actually felt way smoother than I thought it was going to be. And that's nice. That was nice. And what's cool is that every single level will typically introduce at least a new enemy or a new different type of platform. You'll see these little guys on these little mobile guns. Sometimes they'll have shields in front of them. There are these little round guys that create ink as they swim through it, and they're adorable. You got these little flying guys, and then eventually you'll find these sponge blocks that when you fill them with ink, they'll grow, and sometimes the enemies can spray their ink on it and it'll shrink them back down. There are propeller lifts, invisible platforms that show up when you spray ink on them. You got the Octo Snipers here. They suck. And there's also plenty of levels that are basically dubbed Octoling Invasions, where you go into these multiplayer maps, but they're filled with CPU opponents. Once again, if you're just trying to get a good taste of Splatoon before diving into the multiplayer, getting to see the maps and then play against AI that play exactly like a Splatoon character gets the job done perfectly fine. It is way more fun doing this in single player than the local 1v1 mode that this game also has, because remember that this game has a 1v1 mode that's local, even with the online servers down. You're probably still not going to play that. So yes, it is fun to play. That is important to know. However, the bad side, it's very repetitive. Every level, while they do introduce a new idea, it doesn't really change that much of what you're doing. Like, a lot of the scaling up walls and then just tackling enemies by just spraying them and hoping that you hit them, that kind of stays exactly the same throughout the entire campaign, and the campaign's not even all that long. It's only a few hours long, if that, and then maybe there's a little bit of replayability if you want to look for the sunken scrolls, and they are pretty hidden, I will give them that, but there's really not a whole lot there to say, hey, this single player mode was sick. Like, no real moment sticks out as truly incredible. It's just a series of really fun levels that are made better thanks to Splatoon's fun mechanics. Like, despite the fact that Splatoon, one of the whole main appeals is that there's so many different weapons they get to choose from, even in the first game, in this single player mode, you only have one weapon, the hero shot. If you scan an amiibo, you can unlock these challenge levels where you can go through them with other weapons, which is cool, but that's, you know, that's with an amiibo. That's not built into the game. You can upgrade the gun and like some of your special items like that. That's nice. You get like these power eggs throughout the game, and then you can use them back in the overworld to level things up. So that's cool, but by only having one weapon in this game, it really makes it feel like every level, once again, while there is a new enemy or obstacle, that's cool, it makes every level kind of feel the same. After just playing through this campaign, I really couldn't tell you two levels apart. I can just tell you what enemies I thought were cool. Like these round guys, once again, they're adorable. And that same does kind of extend to the bosses, but once again, the style carries these a long way. The style for these bosses are so cool. We got the Octo Stomp, who would go on to become basically like the Wispy Woods of this franchise, showing up in multiple single-player campaigns. That's cool. I like the design of a giant stamp because that ink is bad and he's just huge now. That's cool. And then the other ones like the Octo Nozzle, the Octo Whirl, Octo Maw, they get the job done, but their patterns are all pretty simplistic, and then you just kind of repeat it with like one slight change for each phase, and then you're in and out, no big deal. However, that being said, the final boss against DJ Octavio, the game's new main villain, this boss is pretty sick. This is what this single player campaign needed a whole lot more of, rather than just having it be one arena where you're just mashing the boss with a bunch of ink and then hoping that you win. There's some genuine challenge here by traversing this area in a speedy time and avoiding the things that are being shot at you. Every time you take down one bit of him, he moves to a different spot, so you have a new area that you have to work with. Like this level of just changing things up slightly and, you know, getting a grasp of your environment while also consistently looking back at him and hitting him with the fist that he throws at you. This level of like intensity is, I think, what the bosses need more of. The story being told at this point in the campaign is that Captain Cuttlefish has also now been taken by DJ Octavio. Oh no. So Agent 1 and 2 start to play a more prominent role, and if it wasn't obvious by now, I mean, come on, it's Callie and Marie. And this all leads to the most iconic moment of this game. When the boss is in its clutch mode, about to be taken down, Callie and Marie show up and start to sing Calamari Incantation. What a absolute banger of a song. I love that song so much. I know many of you love that song as well. And to have that song play during a boss fight with all these crazy new mechanics and a boss that was already going really well, it really felt like this is where the story mode was peaking. And for a final boss, I mean, I guess having that be the peak of the story is a good way to go out. Dude, and with the crazy light show going on in the surroundings, what's kind of cool, we're gonna jump ahead a little bit here, this battle is actually portrayed in the sequel as a concert, as an opening to the Squid Sisters act. This first song with DJ Octavio dancing in the back because he can't help himself to dance to this music, this is actually supposed to be a concert. That's what it says in Splatoon 2, so that's cool. That's a cool way to look back at this fight in retrospect. But after enough hits, and then when you just feel like you've had enough Calamari Incantation, I know you gotta say goodbye for now, DJ Octavio gets taken out of his ship, you hit him with a bunch of ink, he gets shot right back in. It's a pretty glorious end sequence with an explosion, crossfade to black. That's a really good final line, and then boom, he's done. And in another clever use of how the game handles the Squid Sister battle map announcement, the game immediately cuts to another one where the Squid Sisters go, hey, the Great Zapfish is back, hooray! And then a really cool, stylish credit sequence where you're spraying paint to reveal the names, and there's another good song playing in the background. Like, once again, the style of Splatoon is incredible. But the main question I started this series off with is it worth going back to Splatoon 1? Is Splatoon 1 still a worthwhile game when online multiplayer is no longer an option and single player is the only real selling point? I get to say that I enjoyed this because I already had access to a Wii U and this game, but I really don't think that if you're a hardcore Splatoon fan, you're missing out on a whole lot if you don't get around to playing this. One of the criticisms with this franchise is that the following single-player campaigns end up being very similar. So you'll often see an opinion that Splatoon 2 single-player does just enough, if not more, that makes this kind of redundant. And fair enough. But at least for its starting point, for the origins of the Splatoon franchise, this gets the job done. But next time, we will be jumping over to the Nintendo Switch with Splatoon 2 single player and see if those criticisms are valid. And yeah, you know what? Splatoon 1 still has like the arcade machine that has not only Squid Beats, which does show up in the sequel, but also Squid Jump, Squid Racer, and Squid Ball. The fact that those games didn't show up in the sequels is, quite frankly, very upsetting. Because, dude, Squid Jump is still sick. Like, Squid Beats, it's very cool. Rhythm games and Splatoon go hand in hand, but Squid Jump? Brother. Squid Jump not coming back in the sequels is a damn near crime.